Oh, geez, this was not easy. Alright, guys. Basically, I wanted to make a video about my favorite albums of all time. And it was tough. Just to provide a bit of context, I'm 20 years old. I've been into metal specifically since I was like 12. And so, you know, a lot of these albums that are on here were kind of introduction albums to a specific type of genre, or a subgenre or whatever. And because of that, you know, they've sort of just resonated with me and they've changed the way I think about music. And I feel like, you know, a lot of the albums on here are, I don't know, like, I feel like in 5 years this will be different, like very, very. The reason being because, you know, obviously in the last couple years I have truly been, you know, exploring the metal underground, and that's where I'm finding some of the absolute best stuff I've ever heard. But I don't really want to take an album that I've only known about for a year and a half, 2 years, and put it in this list and kick out an album that I have, you know, known about for 10 years. So, you know, that's, for me, that's, you know, that's a big part of making this list. That's why it was so difficult. Because you know, there were albums that I truly felt deserved to be on this list, but I hadn't known about them for, in my opinion, long enough to, you know, give an album that I've known about for a very long time the boot. You know, it's tough. So I had to find a balance. So on this top 10 list, and I'm going to do some honorable mentions too. I'll just make it the same video. On the, you know, on this list, I think there's only 4 black metal albums. So yeah. It's tough, man. It was really tough. But I'm gonna give this a go now. Again, actually, before we start, I guess I could point out. I don't know if you can see it, but we're listening to the new Shining CD. Superb fucking shit. Amazing. It's absolutely amazing. It's some of the best I've heard this year so far. Let's give this another go. I've actually already tried recording this and I failed miserably, because, you know, I get to certain albums and all I can do is just stutter because I just don't know how to describe how they make me feel. But I'm going to try not to do this time. Yeah, so number 10, The Black Dahlia Murder, Deflorate. Yeah, this album, it's about 6 years old now. And 6 years, I believe, is enough time to have an album truly, truly steal your heart. And that's what this album has done. The Black Dahlia Murder was the band that got me into, like, the sort of extreme metal that I'm into now. You know, I've said before that bands like Atreyu got me into, you know, extreme metal, but Atreyu got me into, like, just a different type of music entirely. This is really what got me into the stuff that I'm into now. This was sort of the bridge from that kind of music to what I'm into now. And this reminds me so much of high school. It's absolutely absurd how, you know, how many memories I have surrounding this album. You know, I remember having I think it was like ninth grade, I had because I started high school in 2009 when this album came out. And in 9th grade, 2009, I had a PE class where I was that kid who never changed his clothes into the PE clothes, and I always just sat in the bleachers or, you know, outside, off to the side. I never wanted to be, you know, part of that, you know, all those other people's groups or whatever the fuck. So, you know, this is one of the albums that were on my iPod, and because of that, I know every word to every song on this album. And, you know, every time I listen to this album, it reminds me of being, you know, like 14 years old and just truly, truly, you know, discovering an entire separate, you know, genre of music, or entirely separate world of music. And I have this album to thank for that. It's absolutely incredible. Though this doesn't have my favorite Black Dahlia Murder song on it, every single song on here is a masterpiece in my opinion. And I would say my favorite is probably That Which Enroads the Most Tender of Things. That's what I'm going to go with. I'll tell you my favorite for each of these in case you guys are familiar with this album or want to listen to something from this album if you've never heard it. Yeah, I don't care what people say about the Black Dahlia Murder. amazing. That's at number 10, Deflorate. Number 9. Number 9, where did I put it? Why am I so incredibly incompetent? Oh, okay, here we go. Number 9, this was tough too, because I didn't know where this album should be. I just knew it was going to be in the top 10. And that's Forgotten Tomb with Songs to Leave. Like the Black Dahlia murder sort of got me into the more extreme version, or the more extreme side of metal. This was the very first anything I heard from depressive, suicidal black metal. And to this day, it's still my favorite. This is the best DSBM stuff that I've ever heard. I don't even know if this is really considered an album. I mean, it might be considered an EP, but nonetheless, this album is like almost an hour long from what I can remember. So that's like full length. So I'm just gonna go with this being an album. Yeah, there's no competition for the whole DSBM shit. This is second to none. Absolutely amazing stuff. This reminds me so much of the winter, and it reminds me of just all the nights that I would just spend lying in my bed in the dark with the window open, just listening to this. And that was years ago, but I still to this day I can't find DSBM that really makes me feel the way this does. And I think it's because of the album cover. Just a guy laying in the bathtub with the blood all over him. That's what this album makes me think of, is just being in a room with somebody who had committed suicide, and it was like this gruesome bloodbath, and that's what this makes me think of. And I don't know, it's really fucking cool. Disenheartenment is one of my favorite songs of all time, which is the 5th song on here. Yeah, Disheartenment, it's amazing. I mean, these songs on here are pretty long. There's only 5 of them, but yeah, I don't know. This is amazing shit. Forgotten Tomb, Songs to Leave, that's number 9. Number 9, and that's probably not going to change. The next is actually probably the very first... This album reminds me of being a kid. Number 8, The Used, with their self-titled debut album. I cannot properly convey how many memories I have surrounding this album. Probably the most vivid being when I was maybe 8 years old. We took a trip to Tennessee, and during that trip to Tennessee, I had, a CD player and I had a bunch of CDs, but I don't remember ever changing this the whole way there. It was around Christmas time, it was cold outside. It was a really, really amazing trip, and it reminds me, this reminds me of that. And honestly, man, if I had heard this now, I would be like, no, garbage. But it's not because I think it's good, it's purely for nostalgia, and that's what this is. And I just love it so much, man. I mean, this is really the only band me and my sister have, that we've truly, bonded over. Every time I've seen this band live, she's been there with me. And, yeah, I mean, that's really, I don't know. It's just, this reminds me of being a little kid in elementary school, and it reminds me, of my sister, and I don't know, man. It's a really, really great album. I absolutely love it. Greener with the Scenery is easily my favorite thing on this, my favorite song on this album. It's incredible. My very, very first girlfriend that I ever had, we would talk on the phone every single night for hours and hours and hours, and I'm pretty sure I listened to this every night, because I remember I got the CD around the time that all that was happening, and yeah, every night, man, I would listen to this, and absolutely amazing, man. Yeah, that's number 8, the Used self-titled debut. Holds a special place in my little black crispy heart. Let's see what's next on here. Alright, this is another thing kind of like the Used, where it sort of reminds me of being, it just reminds me of a certain period of my life. I don't even know how to describe what this is. I don't know if it's like a sort of weird goth rock type shit or indie goth rock. I don't know. This is Voltaire with The Devil's Bris. Obviously, I'm showing this on CD because it's never been pressed on vinyl. So if there's any CDs in here, that's why. Yeah, The Devil's Bris. I don't know. I don't know how to describe what this is, but there's just, I don't know. This was some of the first stuff I ever heard that was truly dark, I guess. Like the Used had dark messages, but it didn't have a sort of dark sound, or it didn't feel dark. This does. This came out in 1999. I didn't hear it back then, but I heard it a few years later, but even then, this is amazing. I mean, it's pretty much just, I really truly don't know how to describe this. He pretty much sings songs about, death and dying, obviously, but there's also songs about, the first song is called Ex-Lover's Lover, and he pretty much talks about finding his ex-girlfriend's new man and dismembering him and sending parts of his body all over the world. And there's just songs about like things that has happened to him, like the number 4 is called The Man Upstairs, and it's pretty much how he pretty much just talking about how there's the guy upstairs and he's loud and he never sleeps and he's always drunk and something about him is just weird, and he pretty much is just asking somebody who's listening to this to kill him. And I don't know, it's just fucking cool. I mean, When You're Evil is the first song I ever heard from this, and I don't know, man, everything about this just reminds me of being young. It's absolutely killer shit. If I had to say my favorite song on here, it's probably Ex-Lover's Lover or Snakes. Yeah, I would say one of those two. Amazing shit. Definitely check this out, because I don't know how to describe it. So yeah, that's number 7 with Voltaire and The Devil's Bris. Amazing shit. Okay, number 6. This is another introduction album, if you will. This band just doesn't get the... this band doesn't get the recognition it deserves. It gets recognition, just not the good kind. This is Cradle of Filth with Cruelty and the Beast. Bar none the best Cradle of Filth album. This album is incredible. This is before they turned into that symphonic goth metal thing that they're doing now. This is a couple albums before that, because I think the album after this, Midian, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not so familiar with the chronology of this band, unfortunately. Yeah, I believe Midian came after this. But, I like Midian, and everything after that is kind of... But, yeah, this album is incredible. Cruelty Brought the Orchids is one of my favorite songs of all time. This sort of kind of got me into Cradle of Filth as much as I am into them, but it's done so much more than that. I mean, this sort of is what my one of my very best friends, name's Colin. He got me, he showed me Cradle of Filth, and I can't listen to this without thinking about him. And yeah, I love the kid. I love this album. It's got some absolutely amazing songs on it. This has by far my favorite lyrics on a Cradle of Filth album. Just every one of these songs are really great. Like I said, Cruelty Brought the Orchids, Bathory Aria, all sorts of Beneath the Howling Stars, 13 Autumns and a Widow. This whole album's about Elizabeth Bathory, and I don't know, it does so well of sort of depicting the lyrics, depicting the story of, Elizabeth Bathory, and that's what this is, and that's what it's supposed to do, and it's just great shit. Definitely check it out if you're gonna, unless you're gonna be a bitch and, Cradle of Filth sucks. Yes, Cradle of Filth now is not good. This is amazing, though. So, yeah, amazing shit. One of my favorite albums of all time. Really, really awesome. Let's see what's next on here. Core. This is another album that's actually not a metal album. I think this is the last one that's not a metal album. Yeah, I've talked before about this band, and this is the first stuff I ever heard from this band as well. This is Cancer Slug with Whore. This is their debut album. Super raw, very DIY style, horror punk or underground, just rock and roll. This is not radio rock and roll. This is, when you listen to this, and if you ever get a chance to see this band live, they're at these little dive bars with like 20 people, and it's dangerous. Like, there's all sorts of blood, and there's times where there's just like cocaine all over the place, and I don't know, I feel like, now obviously this is not G.G. Allen insane, but this, I feel, shows what rock and roll is sort of thought as by, by people who are on the outside. You take people like, if you think of like these like Christian families, very, religious households, and they think of what rock and roll is, that's what this is. That's what this is trying to be. There's all sorts of songs about rape and murder and just killing babies, and it's just it's insane. My favorite song on this thing, oh boy, shit, I don't know. If I Should Die Tonight, maybe? I don't know. It's amazing stuff. Very raw, very energetic, just crazy shit. So that's number 5 with Whore. Check that shit out, for real. It's awesome. Okay, number 4. Number 4 is my favorite death metal album of all time. I'm not as much into death metal now as I used to be, but that doesn't change the fact that the death metal I am into, really holds a special place in my heart. So this is Death with Leprosy. I mean, what can be said about this album? It's a perfect death metal album. It's not too progressive, it's not too technical, but it's also not too simple. This is, it is stripped down primitive death metal, and that's what I love about it. But it's not like, I don't know how, it's not complex, but it's not like so simple that you get bored, you know what I'm saying? So that's what this is good for. I mean, this is, I'm not one of those people who worships death. I really only think their first 3, maybe 4 albums are worth anything. But there are no words to describe how much I love this album. Yeah, Pull the Plug is obviously my favorite song in this album. That's my favorite death metal song probably of all time. I don't know, this just, I can't say that this really reminds me of a certain point of my life or anything like that. I can just say that this perfectly sums up what I think death metal should be. And because of that, it's definitely worthy of the number 4 spot and the position of my favorite death metal album of all time. So yeah, this album is a goddamn masterpiece, and for some reason, if you've never heard it, you need to get off your ass and you need to listen to this. It's amazing, seriously. So that's Death with Leprosy. Oh shit, oh god, my thumbs up was too strong. Okay, there we go. There we go, it's all good. Everything's good. Okay, number 3. Number 3 is a black metal album. This is an album that I heard probably around the time it came out. I've known about it for a few years, so, but in that few years, like I said, this album has changed the way I think about black metal. This is Cold de Gaulle. hexen. I might not be saying that right, because this A has the little dots over it, and I don't know how that changes the sound of the letter. But either way, bar none, this is the most terrifying album that I've ever heard. With the sort of reverbed, echoed vocals and instruments, and with the sound clips of, women screaming and, like a baby crying, and all sorts of, like, you can tell what's going on. You hear, like, a ritual going on, and this ritual is obviously harming somebody, and it's pretty much the progression of that. And it's absolutely incredible. I mean, what you see on the gatefold here is exactly what I would have pictured this album as being. Dark, cavernous, literally terrifying. It's amazing. I would say the very last track on this thing, The Impure Wedding, is probably my favorite. There was a time I was listening to this with my girl, and she admitted that, she said that it sounded terrifying. And that's what I love so much about this, man. I mean, the artwork, everything about this is it's just amazing. This sort of reconfirmed the fact that I think that black metal is supposed to be scary. It's supposed to be terrifying and dark and cavernous and raw, and that's everything. This personifies all of that. And yeah, you should definitely check this out. Best listen to, for best results, listen to In the Dark by yourself or with other people tied up, and you have a ritual dagger, and you are, performing the rituals that are happening in the album. You could try it. I've never done it. I think it'd be cool. Okay, number 2. This is the album that got me into black metal, period. This is Immortal with Battles in the North. Bar none, the best Immortal album. I don't know why I took it out of the sleeve, but this is easily the best Immortal album. It's fast, and it's raw, and it's energetic, but it doesn't sacrifice being... I don't know, it doesn't sacrifice that black metal feel that I think black metal albums should have. And being that this is the album that got me into black metal, this definitely, it's stood the test of time, not just, since 1994, 1995, whenever this album came out, but, for me specifically, when I heard this album years ago. Obviously, Blushrick Mighty Raven Dark is the song that I first heard from this album, and to this day, that and just the title track Battles in the North are my favorite Immortal songs. Or Thrown by Black Storm is another one, but I cannot properly tell you how I feel about this album. It's amazing. I don't know, I just wish I lived in cold weather so I could properly listen to this album. But Battles in the South just doesn't have that same ring. I want to live where this album fits perfectly with the climate. Yeah, I don't know. This is just, it's perfect. I don't know why anybody would ever have a problem with this album, but I know there are people who just don't like this Immortal, and I don't know why. I mean, it's everything Immortal. It's everything I listen to Immortal for, and that's why I love this album so fucking much. Battles in the North, I don't know what else to say. It's a perfect album. Yeah. That's my favorite black metal album of all time. Arguably. Like I said, there's some albums that have come out in the last few years that I feel so strongly about, but I can't put it on this list and feel good about myself. So, yeah, that's Battles in the North. Amazing. And number 1, my favorite album of all time. This is Cattle Decapitation with Humanure. I think most of you were probably expecting this. I actually don't know what version this is. I have a couple versions of this album, so I don't know if this is the original or the reissue. Oh, this is the original. Yeah, this you know, this is the album that got me into Cattle Decapitation, which I do consider to be my very favorite band. And this has my favorite Cattle Decapitation songs on it. This reminds me of my favorite point in my entire life. It's nostalgic, it's dark, it's evil, it's scary, it's disgusting, it's perfect. It's perfect. Yeah, the Cattle Decapitation will never compare to this album. Now, that's not saying their albums after this haven't been gold, but they're just not this. So, I could say my I don't know if you can consider this a death metal album, which is why I said Leprosy is my favorite death metal album. I guess it's sort of more a death grind, but I don't really care about that. Yeah, this reminds me of middle school, and like this reminds me of like 6th, 7th grade middle school. But I don't know. I think probably The Earthling or Applied Human Defragmentation or Polyps is probably my favorite song, along with Chummified. But I don't know, man. I mean, this album is just gold. It's perfect. I don't know what else to say about it. It's energetic and it feels gross. I mean, it makes you feel gross. And especially, you know, knowing the lyrics doesn't help that. I mean, obviously I know every word to every song on this album. Yeah, I don't know. I can't properly tell you how I feel about this album because it's perfect. Every time I hear the very beginning of the first song, I don't know. I know the next little bit of my life is just going to be awesome. And that's why I don't know. No album makes me feel the way this album does. And this will probably forever be one of my very, very, very favorite albums, in the top 3 or so. But like I said, you know, so much I'm listening to now has sort of taken over, and but that hasn't changed the fact that this album is a goddamn masterpiece. So that's number 1, my favorite album of all time, Cattle Decapitation with Humanure. So being that this video is already long as fucking shit, I'm just gonna go through and tell you some of the honorable mentions. I'm just gonna start with the CDs here. I'm just gonna show you. Oh fuck! Oh my god! Okay. All right, real quick. Honorable mention time. Static X, Cannibal. It's like listening to a B-horror movie. It's fun. It's ridiculous. It's awful. It's not a good I mean, it's not good, but I love it so much because it has that B-horror movie feel. Perfect shit. Next, Imperium, Songs of Moors and Misty Fields. Dark, melancholic, sort of folky, blackish metal, and it's amazing. There's not one song on here that doesn't tickle my fancy. So that's really good shit. Sabaton, The Art of War. It's Sabaton. It's fun. It's Sabaton at their best. Has most of my favorite Sabaton songs on here are on this album. So yeah, Sabaton. That's amazing. Art of War. Obviously, you guys know how I feel about this. This is Sargeist with Let the Devil In. This is one of the albums that I really wanted to put in the top 10, but I just couldn't because I hadn't known about this album for more than a year and a half. So, yeah, Sargeist, Let the Devil In. One day I will remake this video, and this will be on here. One of my other favorite death metal albums of all time, or brutal death metal, this is Putrid Pile with The Pleasure in Suffering. Yeah, I don't know, this is my favorite brutal death metal album of all time. Mainly, I mean, this has the song Battered Bitch on it, along with Rush Hour, Killing Spree, Strangle the Fucking Cunt, Rip Her to Shreds, Gorging on Labia, Baby Brains is a cool little short song, Food for the Maggots is the first song I ever heard from Putrid Pile. That's all amazing. So if you're not familiar with Putrid Pile, you definitely need to familiarize yourself with Putrid Pile. Mayhem, De Mysteriis Dom Satanas. I wanted to put this in the top 10 too, but I don't know what stopped me. I genuinely feel like I wish 10 meant 11, so I could just put that album in there somewhere. Yeah, absolutely amazing. One of the best black metal albums of all time. Great. My Chemical Romance, again, it just reminds me of being a little kid, and because of that, I feel like it, you know, truly deserves a spot as one of my very favorite albums ever. Another one of my favorite black metal albums of all time, Bathory, self-titled debut. I don't know how somebody could not love this album. The riffs and just it's evil sounding and it's just amazing. I love this album. That's Bathory. Perfect. One of the most fun albums of all time. This is actually a country music album, or psychobilly, or whatever the fuck you want to call it. This is Coffin Shakers with their self-titled album, Coffin Shakers. It's amazing. Unfortunately, this album's only a few years old, so that's why I didn't make it into my top. But since this is not a metal album, I feel like I can put this into this list because, you know, I don't like country music. I just love this. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Panopticon, Kentucky. I'm from Kentucky. You know, this holds a special place in my heart just because of that. But then, besides that, this is the first Panopticon I heard. So this is the first stuff, you know, I heard that was like mixing black metal and bluegrass. So again, it was kind of an introduction to a style of black metal, and because of that, it's just amazing. I love it so much. My favorite Burzum album, which I know of before I said Philosophem was, but after much reconsideration, Dead Som in Gangvar. There are no, I mean, Key to the Gate, that song, are you serious? If you don't like that song, I don't like you. Burzum, Dead Som in Gangvar. My favorite Darkthrone album, Panzerfaust. Definitely their best. Their most necro of albums, their darkest, their most evil. It's perfect. Let's see, and finally, the last song I'm going to put on this list, King Dude with Love. Again, this album's only a few years old, but as it's not a metal album, I feel like I can put it on this list because it changed my my taste as a whole, I guess. It broadened my horizon musically. So, yeah. That's it, guys. That's the top 10 and a bunch of honorable mentions that aren't in order. But thanks for watching. Subscribe if you like it. I'm so sorry this video is 32 minutes long, but yeah. I hope to see you guys real soon, and yeah, fuck off.